Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So I have the pleasure of welcoming an incredible guest, someone who works in a similar industry to myself, Abdul, owner of Shakur Investments. Abdul, it's great to have you on my channel. We're going to have some awesome topics today.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for having me on your show.
Absolute pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. For the viewers and just anyone who watches, I'm going to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about today. It is going to be everything, as in the title, about raising private investment. You know, whether this is for property, your new business ventures, whatever it might be, most of us at some point will run out of money and we need to raise our own money, right? So it's a very hot topic. Not everyone knows where to start. So we're going to cover absolutely everything from the beginning to the middle to the end of where you need to go in order to raise private investment. So Abdul, if you could just kindly give us an overview, my friend, of what you do and what your company does.
Cool. So I've been in business for about 12 years now. Touch wood, I haven't had to go work for anyone so far. I run a real estate private equity firm. Essentially what we do is we go out there and we raise funds for developers. I invested in 5 separate businesses that serve the value or serve the real estate industry. And I run an academy which now has about 60 mentees. The goal is for me essentially is to become a private equity fund. We will go out there and raise millions of 20 to 30 million pounds every year. And that will allow us to do, rather than doing 1 or 2 projects a year or 3 or becoming a developer myself, it's about partnering with other people and doing 50, 60 projects a year.
Awesome. Well, you know, I think you're going to get there. You know, you've raised, is it 7 million so far in private investments? That's a huge amount. So listen, for all the viewers, do not go anywhere, because we really are going to share some top tricks and tips in regards to how you can go about raising private investment, because a big part of it is relationships. So what I want to start with before we get into some of the finer details is what kind of raising in private investment is. You know, what kind of options are there? What's actually raising investment? Because I think people get confused around brokering in regards to your bridging finance, your mortgages, your private banks, but what kind of options are there for people?
I think there's quite a few options. Again, you've got joint venture finance, which is usually a high net worth individual that will put in will put in all the money and they will take an equity within the deal. And then you've got the standard, normal, sophisticated investor that will give you a loan agreement, or they'll sign a loan agreement and will give you funds for a fixed return. So those are the 2 typical types of investors that we tend to deal with.
Yeah, and how have you found building your network? You know, sort of to give the viewers just an idea, because I think there's a perspective from many that this can be done quite quickly, when actually when you dive into it, it can take quite a while. So you've raised 7 million, you work with high net worth clients, you're raising capital. How long has it taken you to build a solid foundation in regards to your investor network?
I think it's not, because I've been in business for 12 years, there are a lot of crossover networks. And I think that's given me an advantage where there's people that I met 7, 8 years ago that are now of value to me now across different industries. It can be quite quick and it can also be very slow. It all depends on how much of a priority you put this as. A lot of people don't put raising money as a priority, which is why they never get around to actually doing it. For me, it's my day-to-day activity. So I can raise money. I can, if someone give me a huge target to raise money within 6 weeks, I can achieve that because it's a priority within my business. For me personally, building a network, again, if you don't have a network of your own, most of my investors have been cold contacts. I do use LinkedIn a lot, but I also try and diversify by going into other networks and other industries. I don't network too much within the property industry, and that's something that I'm a big believer in. Surround yourself with people who you're actually going to be of value to.
Yeah. So I would pretty much mirror what you've just said in the terms of, cross networking is huge. I think, for anyone watching this that is in property, you might believe that you need to go to a lot of property events, where actually is if you cross network and you head to some business meetings or breakfasts, or you start changing it up, you actually realize that there are a lot of wealthy people who don't find property the most exciting, but they would lend to someone in property that they want, they're the expert in that industry, but they would lend money to you. So cross networking is massive. So, why would someone want to raise money? Why would someone come to you, Abdul, and say, look, I'm looking to raise this, or, can you recommend how I go about doing it? Why do people want to raise private investment?
I think firstly, not everyone's made from money. I think this is very important to understand that there's a lot of us out there that get into building wealth because we haven't come from wealth ourselves. So I think a lot of people don't have that initial funds to be able to do projects, don't have a great credit history, might not even have a full-time job that's paying them £100,000 a year. So for anyone that's starting off, it's a great place for them to kind of learn from other people, but also have the money there that you don't normally have. Secondly, I think it's about scaling what you're doing. Rather than, putting your own money in, I had a developer from Turkey. He was, he's developing here in the UK. He put all his money into a project. I'm not even talking bridging finance. I'm not even talking development finance. He put all of his own money into a project. And I said, look, you can do that, but you're only going to do one project a year. This way, you can raise money and scale what you're doing to 10 to 20 to 30 projects a year. You can become a millionaire within a year just from doing a few of these things.
Yeah, it's about correct leverage, isn't it? And look, I spoke about it with other people as well, other guests that I've had, is that there's good leverage, but then there's being over leveraged. There's having too much debt on your hands. And like you just said, Abdul, is you could use your own money. And for anyone watching thinking, okay, I've got some money in the bank, right? Yes, you can do that. And, you're at full responsibility for your own money. So there's more comfort there, but you are limited to the amount that you can do, because the saying is true. You do run out of your own money at some point. So leveraging other people's money is fantastic. So Abdul, how have you gone about raising money, and what would your top tips for anyone watching this? How have you raised money?
I think the first is treating yourself as if you're not a property developer, but treating yourself as if you're an investment company. It's very important that you make that mindset switch between, seeing yourself as a property developer, which is all about your projects and what you're doing. And from an outward perspective or a public perspective, you're an investment company where people can put their money in. A lot of people, have property in their titles, and call themselves developers. I don't call myself a developer. We're an investment company. That allows us to attract a lot more money. That's the first switch I make. Yeah. Second thing is, 80% of people don't have a generic brochure. A brochure goes wonders, and it saves people a lot of time. Again, you got to make it look as if it's more corporate. Again, there's a lot of unprofessionalism in our market, and people, although we don't like people in suits sometimes, the idea is we'll always go to the person that's got more credibility, that has that professionalism, that, again, those first impressions matter. So for me, it's having that corporate outlook where people can rely on us and they can trust us. Thirdly is, for us, it's always speaking to people. I think you gotta always be raising money, no matter even if you don't have any projects at this minute, even if you're over sort of stretch, you gotta have that consistent amount of money coming in, because what it allows you to do, it allows you to open doors. Rather than you focusing on a particular location, a particular deal, you have the freedom to be able to okay, I've got this money coming. What can I do with this money? What location can I go to? What project can I do? What can I invest in? And last but not least, I think a lot of people, when it comes to raising money, they, when you're doing a development projects, all the money is done down to a T. Like, you've got specific amount of money. A bridging company is not going to give you, 50 grand extra. So you need money coming in so you can service your projects, so you can do other things with that money, or even just to keep your cash flow going.
Yeah. There were massive takeaways. I want to go over a few there to really sort of reiterate what you've just said. So one thing I totally agree with, and I really strongly recommend anyone watching this, especially when it comes to your social media profiles, is that you don't niche down and specifically call yourself one thing. You just said there about calling yourself a property investor, and I can't agree with you more. And I say this when I have my one-to-one calls, is that keep your options open and be broad. I'm down as investor relations. That's very much similar to what you are, because an investor might see, anyone watching this, look, if you've got property investor in your title or a specific title, you are directing the investor to make a decision before even speaking to you, a yes or a no. So keep it open. I love that. So that's very much aligned with me. And like you said, always look to keep raising money, because if you build a pot in the background, Abdul, I always say this, I don't know what your thoughts are on this. How many people, especially in the property sourcing world, go out and view property, take the photos, but they've got no buyers? It's all about time, isn't it, and value and return on time invested. So again, really strong points made by Abdul for anyone watching is build up your buyers, build up the investor network, keep raising money, because then you can pull the trigger when a project comes up. So that was amazing. So building a network, what kind of events do you go to, Abdul? Where are you spending your time now?
I spend a lot of time at business events, but I've gone to some different types of events. Like, for example, I'll go to charity dinners. I'll go to art investment networks. I'll try and diversify as much as I can. I will pick a random event that I've got nothing to do with what I do, but I'll go along because I know I'll be the only investment company in the room. So I've gone to a legal professionals event. I've gone to an art event, which is like, again, there's a lot of crossovers between art and property investments. And I'll go to a charity event. I'll sit on boards. I'll sponsor these events. I'll even sponsor random podcasts because for me, I know that I'm going to get access to a different audience. The property industry is a very small world. Everyone kind of knows each other, whether it's through a podcast or whether it's through Instagram or through social media. You kind of, you're not far from another person. And again, all these people are doing their own projects. So for me, it's like I focus on going to events which other people don't have, even religious events. I've started to go into a lot more religious events purely because it's a niche that I know that there's not many people operating in. Two, I can be the only investment company in the room. And for me, that's massive because people will flock to you. The minute you put your hand up and say, I run an investment firm, you'll have people come to you at the end of an event.
Yeah, these are massive points. I mean, we are, I knew that we were aligned before we spoke on this call. I've seen your stuff. Even through my old profiles and stuff, we've been following each other for a while. And, I'm going to go over it again for anyone watching. I put this in my book as well. Spend time at business meetings, art network, art events and exhibitions are massive because, if you can find the right event and network, like you say, you are putting yourself probably in a minority as who's going to be in that room in your industry. And when you go to a property event, we talk a lot about property because it's always a great case study, is that there's a lot of newbies, there's a lot of people looking for money, so you're very limited. And if there is that one investor, you're almost pitching because 30 people before or after are going to be speaking to that individual as well. So look for events. I'll throw a few out there. I don't know where you use or sources that you use, but obviously there's Eventbrite that you can look at. Meeting on LinkedIn, some events managers. Where do you kind of seek out these events to go to? Because that would, I imagine, be the next question for the watchers.
I think a meetup's a good one. Meetup is because I used to love going to meetup events purely because I know that there's such a variety. Everyone's got a passion. Like whether you're passionate about gaming, whether you're passionate about something, whatever you're passionate about, you can find an event to go to. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go to events which you're not passionate about. So you can go onto Meetup, find something that's completely random. Like even if you're single, go to a speed dating event. Like for example, you could find investors there. You never know. This is a huge thing which I try and do is look for things which, again, I always ask for recommendations as well. Like I will go to people in my network and say, there might be professionals, they might be in different industries. I'm like, what events are you going to? Do you have any awards dinners that you've got coming up? Can I buy a ticket on your table? All these little things that, I feel like people need to do to go to these different events is simply just ask.
Yeah, I think there's a very strong message here, and I'm picking this up from you already, is that you're someone who gets up and just does it, and you can meet investors, but you've got to get up, you've got to go to these charity events, you've actually got to go and speak with people. And I think, Abdul, I think many people are concerned about telling people what they do in order to ask for the money in return. But how is anyone meant to know that you need money if you're not asking them at some point,
And this is the other thing as well. Like, a lot of people in our industry, for example, if you go to a property network and you're like, I've got this deal, I'm looking for an investor, they will be like, I want a second charge. It needs to be like a 50% massive return. It needs to have, all these massive requirements that they have, which are a bit silly because there's people out there asking for a first charge. And I'm sitting there thinking, hold up. The bank has the first charge most of the time. The people who you're getting lending from will have the first charge. How are you going to give them a first charge? So I find it a bit interesting where, people are asking for these second charges. Majority of the loan agreements that I've signed, about 90% of them have not asked for a second charge because they don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's exactly that. I mean, that comes down to the knowledge, and it's so funny because I think we'll end up having a lot of the same conversations with people. I think we're pretty on the same page in terms of conversations that we have, and that is also something that always comes up. Security. Let's touch on this. You know, anyone looking to raise money, you can do it. Yet there are ways that you can raise money. You don't need to have loads and loads of assets in the background. And I'm always on the fence between, is there such thing as raising money and building a portfolio with no assets in the background or nothing to offer? I don't necessarily believe that. I'm very much on the fence. However, are there very good strategic ways that you could leverage someone's money? But the key is security. I mean, how important is security and risk management in what you deal in?
You talk about risk management and security, and there's a lot of newbies that might be listening to this. So for me, the key thing that I try and do is, for example, anyone that's starting off, there's a couple of things I would do. One is leverage your power team. A lot of people don't leverage the experience or the credibility of their power team. Again, as developers, we're kind of project managers more so. So, you know, most of the time what we're doing is the architect's doing the work, the construction's doing the work, the legal person's doing their work, the broker's doing their work. Why not pick one, leverage their credibility, leverage their projects, even to the extent that you could even go to your architect and say, look, back end your fees, I'm going to give you an equity share in the project. Now, not only are they going to go above and beyond to make it happen for you, you're not paying fees in the beginning. And thirdly, when you're speaking to an investor, you can have the architect, or you can have that person on the call who knows about the little bits of detail that the investor might be asking. Or it just brings another credibility to the table because, for example, you know, I didn't have a property portfolio. I just had a huge network when I first started out. And the first thing that I did was, I was like, I went to a developer or a construction company and I said, take 25% of this deal. I only want even just 10% of this deal. But I want to be able to make sure that, you know, when you're on the call with me, just, again, talk to people about your experience and your credibility, which then I can leverage. You know, we talk about leveraging money, but how much was leverage the credibility of other people in the room? How much do we leverage the credibility of even past jobs? You know, some of the people have come from amazing backgrounds where they've done amazing bits of work, and yet they're still afraid of putting that out there.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think when it comes down to relationships, I think this is something else that is rushed. I think a lot of people underestimate the time length that you'll need to put in for relationships. Not all of them, but look, anyone again watching, you do need to get comfortable with the fact that it might be 2-3 coffees, it might be a dinner, and then it might be a fair few phone calls. But then on the flip side, you might meet, I mean, Abdul, I'm sure you have very much the same. I have investors in Dubai, I've never even met them. It's all been done by phone calls, you know, because of the distance. So it can absolutely be done both ways. And it really comes down to, and look, for anyone watching, stick around because we're going to get onto LinkedIn in a minute, which I know you're really hot on and so am I. But for relationships, they do take time. They can both be done quickly and over a longer period of time. But doesn't it really come down to us in the beginning, our likability?
Absolutely. Like you got to be human. And again, I say this to most of my clients and most people I work with. You got to get your values across very early on. Like values are so important. That person might be super wealthy compared to where you are in your journey. The one thing that the reason why they're gonna do business with you is because of your values, is how you approach things, is the meaning behind the purpose that you have for why you're doing property. You gotta be able to share these things because these things, like, I think values secure the deal when it comes to a relationship. I've had a single family office that I've been talking to probably for about 3 years. And they've invested in some of our projects. But it took me 3 years to get to that stage where they can put $1 million plus into a project.
Yeah. Yeah.
That didn't happen overnight. But I stayed consistent. I stayed true. I stayed authentic. But more importantly, I wasn't desperate. Yeah. There's a huge thing about like people like, I need money today, or I need this project to go off the line. I need investors. I'm like, try and avoid that as much as you possibly can. I'll put it from a place of abundance. I'll put it from a place where actually you don't need that investor, but it would be nice to have that investor. And you want to work with that individual because you see the impact that it's going to have on them rather than it being about you.
Yeah, massive point there. I mean, look, note that down because that is something that also shakes credibility. If an investor can see that you're pestering, you're not giving it time, you're not allowing them to think about that project, it shows that the project might not be watertight, your credibility, it's rushed. No one, look, if investors have earned their money, it's hard-earned money, apart from, the silver spoon people, but it is hard-earned money. So, you know, anytime, I mean, even us as retail investors, you know, and when we get to the stage of high net worth and ultra high net worth, you know, they want to think about it. But the good thing is, I can reassure everyone, and Abdul, I'm sure you'll second this, is that when you make it and you work with the high net worth, the decisions are quick when it comes to the financials. They don't hang about. I want to touch on LinkedIn. How important is LinkedIn to grow your network?
I think it's probably the most vital tool for anyone that doesn't have a network. Again, it's all about how you approach LinkedIn. A lot of the time, I feel like people see LinkedIn and I see these spammy messages. One, they're breaking FCA regulation rules, but secondly, they're putting out percentages. And again, these are things that aren't talked about, but LinkedIn is a way for you to access people who are ultra high net worth, who are high net worth individuals that want to diversify. For me, I love targeting business owners on LinkedIn purely because I'm a business person and I have been for a very long time, so I can relate to them. But secondly, a lot of these guys have had huge successes. And if they've had more successes, they want to diversify. They know, especially during COVID, that what we've been through right now, they know that they need to diversify. They can no longer rely on the income that they've had from the industry or the success that they've had. We all go through ups and downs in business. They don't want to go back into a down. So giving them an option to stay on that high will be a huge value to them.
Yeah. I can't believe actually how much aligned we are. So everything Abdul is saying, I would just be repeating myself in the sense of you're saying everything that I'm going to come off the back of. And LinkedIn has been huge for me. Abdul, I've been on LinkedIn since 2015 and it's paid wonders. And I don't know if you remember, but back then, for anyone watching, is LinkedIn, it was massively active in the sense you could put out a post that possibly is borderline FCA rule breaking, but you would get massive traction. And I do exactly the same, that when I am looking, again, if you're looking to raise money, business owners, it's business owners. And the beauty is, Abdul, I don't know if you do this, I mentioned this in my book, is that the company's house is essentially a black book where you can find out financials and get a really good understanding of a company before you approach them. Do you use such things as, this is a bit of a tip from me, is endorsements? Let's just say I'm going to paint this picture for anyone watching. Abdul, you're my targeted investor. I'm going to hop on to my endorsements or your endorsements, and I use someone that might have endorsed you to break that barrier instead of it being a cold call, to see if they can introduce me. Is there any kind of LinkedIn tricks that you use that the audience can take away?
You know, the interesting one I used recently was, you know, oftentimes, you know, I've got like 14,000 connections. So for me, it's like, there's no way I can get through everyone at any point in time. So what I do is every now and again, I'll update my job title and I will spread it out to the network. Now, everyone then gets a notification. Everyone then gets a message and be like, oh, congrats, congrats, congrats. And what I do is I try and leverage that to then book appointments and to have catch-up calls with people, to get to know people a little bit more. So that's one of the things that I utilize a lot more. Third thing is, again, people don't take time out to do research on people's profile. They'll just send out messages because they're like, oh, he's got a good job title, let me send him a message. Yeah. For me, it's like I take time to really dig deep within any PR that the company's had more recently, any sort of success that they had. I'd go through their past posts. I'm not trying to send out 100, 150 messages a day. I'm trying to send between 10 to 20 quality messages a day that allow me to pick up that level of business or allow me to get a stronger reaction.
This is the truth in this interview. Like, people need to be making notes on this, because this is golden. This is really how you raise investment. I do exactly the same. Why bother sending 100 emails or 100 template messages when you can really target, like you said, 10 to 20 and have a conversion rate of maybe 3 or 4 of those that sit down and have a meeting with you. So one thing that I'm using, Abdul, at the moment, this is my tip for those watching, is that polls at the moment are going insane. If you can nail a poll, so look, if someone's looking to raise money for whatever it might be, put out a poll that has 4 options that you would like as the individual. You know, if you had 50,000 in the bank now, would you like to see it in property, crypto, or whatever it might be, and then perhaps a percentage of what you might see, you know, within those guidelines, and get some answers and see what people are putting, and then you've actually got a target of who you can approach. Hi Abdul, saw that you chose property between a 10 to 15% on your money. Just wanted to have a chat. So do you see what I mean? I mean, there's so many ways in LinkedIn at the moment. You can really target, I mean, even keyword search. Do we really use that and maximize the usage?
That's a big one. For me, the search option is probably one of the most powerful tools on LinkedIn. You can niche down to location, industry, how many employees they might have. There's so many things that you can niche down to. It's unbelievable. For example, you can target just doctors or medical professionals within your city.
Yeah.
And you can send them, you can connect with them, and then you can one by one message them directly. Again, a lot of people don't do this, don't use the search option. That's how I've grown my network. I've just consistently, I spend probably, again, I max out every other day where like every week where I can't send any more connection requests because I'm constantly connecting with new people. Because I believe LinkedIn is your shop window. And I treat it as this. LinkedIn is your shop window. Your message request is a way to get people onto your shop window. You need to get them to look into what you're doing. If you have a good profile, an updated profile, which has the right keywords, has the right messaging points, is SEO driven, all of these little things that you can do to make have testimonials on there, all these things you can add to your LinkedIn profile. People are more likely to reach out to you if they see your profile. Now, that's all I'm trying to get to do. I'm trying to get eyeballs on my LinkedIn profile. If I can do that, I know that I have more chance of people responding to my message.
Yeah, eyeballs was the key word there. So these are conversations I have all the time. What I want to finish on now, Abdul, is the positioning, so branding. We've obviously just touched on lightly the profile, the setup, because we want to tell a story. This is what we do, this is who we are, this is what we're offering if you get in touch. So how important across all social media, all touch points, is it for that positioning? Because look, when I see your profile, Abdul, I see what you do, I know what you do. So I know that you're the man to go to, apart from myself, in regards to raising finance, raising investment. So how important for anyone watching to take away this is important not to be under a rock. You need to be out there on your branding.
There's a whole misconception about people having to go live every day, or people having to constantly do videos or do things that are completely out of their comfort zones. Now, I'm not a guy that goes live every day. I'm not a guy that's constantly talking to people on my stories. I'm just someone that just stays consistent, utilizing the strengths which I have, which is a written word. I like to call myself a wordsmith. So again, it's about staying consistent with it, but also understanding the tone of voice that you kind of portray out. A lot of people will try and copy someone else's tone of voice, and I've seen it. Like, we'll copy Grant Cardone's tone of voice. We'll copy, Gary Vee's tone of voice. And I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm thinking, you gotta own your own tone of voice. It's gonna be more authentic to you, but also people are more likely to see you as a human being. If you're unapproachable, and if you're not responding to people on a consistent amount of basis, then you're not going to really build a list of people that are reaching out to you for investments.
Abdul, this information is golden. I think there's going to be so many takeaways. I can almost see a part 2 where perhaps we dive into some more niche detail that people will watch this. This is very much the overview. And obviously this is going to go onto YouTube. But what I will say for the watchers, I think it would be awesome at some point on Instagram that we go live and get some live questions, because I think we could spark up a bit of a good storm there. So Abdul, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can people reach out to you if they want to get in touch?
Well, just like yourself, on every single social media platform there is. Just type in Abdul Shakur London, LDN for short. They can visit my website, abdulshakur.com. They can even check out how I've done my website, shakurinvest.com. If anyone is trying to raise money or trying to build an investment-driven sort of website, they can check that out as well. But just type me on social media and I'm around.
Awesome. Well, Abdul, I'm going to include all of your links and so forth in the description below. For everyone who has watched, thank you so much. Abdul, it's been an absolute pleasure, honestly. And until next time, and there will be a next time, we will see you all very soon.